My name is Diana. I am 30 years old, and on that freezing Christmas Eve, my hand froze on the doorknob. The envelope containing 4 first-class tickets felt suddenly heavy. I had worked exhausting hours to afford this gift, hoping to bring us closer. Instead, standing on that porch, I heard the brutal truth. Inside the dining room, my mother kept talking. After Christmas, remind her about the utility bills. We need her to keep paying so we can save up for your new house. Just don't let her find out. My dad scoffed. If she hesitates, just make her feel guilty. She is always so easy to manipulate. She never really did anything for this family. Then came my sister's mocking laughter. She just buys a few things and acts like some kind of savior. That laughter shattered my last illusion of family. I did not kick the door open. I did not scream or cry. Rage, when it becomes absolute, turns incredibly quiet. I backed away, turned around, and walked straight to my car. The pain lasted only a second before cold calculation took over. If they believed I contributed nothing, it was time to legally strip away everything I owned. Welcome to Revenge Mode. If you enjoy satisfying stories where betrayal is met with cold, calculated justice, hit that subscribe button. Join us to see exactly how I dismantled their perfect lives. As the car door clicked shut, I instantly pulled out my phone, refusing to let myself hesitate or show weakness for another second. The engine remained off, but I barely noticed the freezing temperature. I unlocked the screen and immediately opened the airline application. I navigated to the upcoming trip section. The itinerary for 4 first-class tickets to Honolulu loaded on the display. This was supposed to be the ultimate Christmas surprise, a peace offering to a family I thought just needed a little more time to appreciate me. Now it served as the opening move of my retaliation. I pressed the cancel booking button. A warning prompt appeared, alerting me that I would forfeit a substantial cancellation fee of $800 for breaking the holiday reservation. I tapped confirm without a flinch. The screen refreshed, displaying a 0 balance. The digital boarding passes vanished from my account. The gift was officially voided. I swiped the application away, feeling an immense sense of relief wash over me instead of sorrow. The burden of trying to buy their love vanished completely. I sat back against the headrest and stared at the dark steering wheel. My eyes remained completely dry. Instead of crying, I began running the numbers in my head. I calculated the exact amount of money I spent every single month to keep that brick house functioning. I factored in the Texas electricity costs, which spiked heavily during the winter months for central heating. I added the municipal water, broadband, internet packages, and trash collection bills. I included the premium homeowners insurance policy I renewed for them every spring. I realized I had been funding their entire existence for the past 4 years. They viewed my bank account as a bottomless well. They genuinely believed my financial contributions were a basic right, while viewing my presence as a burden. I shifted my mental arithmetic to the physical items inside the property. The living room set the kitchen appliances, the security system. The total sum was astronomical. I needed absolute legal leverage. I opened my mobile browser and accessed my email archives. I logged directly into my Amazon account and filtered my order history. I located the receipts for the smart home security cameras and the wireless router. I downloaded the invoices as PDF files. Next, I opened the Costco application. I retrieved the digital purchase records for the double-door stainless steel refrigerator and the heavy-duty washer and dryer combo. I switched to Best Buy to find the transaction for the flat-screen television. Finally, I accessed my Apple Pay history to pull the billing statements for the leather sofa and the solid oak dining table. Every single document displayed my full name as the primary buyer. Every billing address matched my personal apartment in the city, proving the items were merely placed at their residence, not gifted. I organized all the files into a single secure folder on my device, titling it Asset Retrieval. These documents constituted undeniable proof of ownership under state property laws. With the evidence secured, I searched for professional relocation services operating in the Plano area. I needed a crew willing to work a holiday night. I found a logistics company advertising emergency after-hours dispatch. I clicked their contact link and dialed the number. The line rang 3 times before someone picked up. "Texas Rapid Movers Emergency Dispatch speaking," a gruff voice answered. "I need 2 large moving trucks and a full crew for an immediate property retrieval," I stated clearly. "I am willing to pay triple your standard holiday rate for immediate deployment." "It is Christmas Eve, ma'am. An emergency dispatch right now will cost exactly $2,500 paid up front," the dispatcher informed me. "Send the secure payment link to this number. I need the crew at the location in exactly 1 hour," I replied. A text message arrived seconds later. I authorized the transaction immediately. The dispatcher confirmed the convoy was prepping to leave their warehouse and would await my signal. My mind was entirely devoid of panic or hesitation. I placed the phone on the passenger seat and finally pushed the ignition button. The engine roared to life. I shifted the vehicle into drive, signaling my exit, and pulled away from the curb. I navigated out of the quiet suburban neighborhood without casting a single glance in the rearview mirror. I drove toward the brightly lit downtown commercial district to meet my legal representation and execute the next phase. 20 minutes later, I walked into a 24/7 co-working space in downtown Plano to meet my legal representative. I found a secluded glass booth in the corner, sat down, and opened my laptop. I connected to the secure network and logged directly into my personal Chase Bank portal. I navigated straight to the bill pay and scheduled transfer section. The interface displayed the active recurring payments assigned to the property. I clicked on the Texas Power Grid account first. The system asked for a reason for cancellation. I selected the option stating services were no longer required and clicked Confirm. I repeated this exact procedure for the municipal water department, the broadband internet provider, and the annual homeowner's insurance policy. A series of confirmation emails populated my inbox instantly. The financial pipeline was officially severed. From this moment, the responsibility shifted entirely to them. I was no longer paying for the roof over their heads or the heat keeping them warm. I opened a new tab and accessed my primary credit account dashboard. I clicked on the Authorized Users Management tab. Cynthia's name appeared on the screen, linked to a secondary platinum card. I pulled up her spending history for the current billing cycle. The screen filled with charges from high-end boutiques, expensive restaurants, and salon appointments. I ignored the numbers and focused on the controls. I bypassed the option for a temporary freeze and selected the permanent lock function. A prompt warned me that this action could not be undone. I pressed execute. The system registered the command and her card status instantly updated to deactivated. Her financial lifeline was cut off. The next time she tried to swipe that card, the terminal would decline the transaction. A few moments later, footsteps approached the booth. My lawyer, Gregory, pushed the glass door open and walked inside. He wore a dark suit and carried a thick leather briefcase. He took the seat directly across from me and immediately opened his own laptop. I turned my screen to face him, displaying the organized folder containing all the downloaded invoices and receipts. "All payment receipts are under my name. You can check the Apple Pay and Best Buy histories," I stated, pushing the device closer to him. Gregory put on his glasses and began reviewing the files one by one. He meticulously cross-referenced the billing addresses on the Amazon and Costco invoices with my state identification. He verified that every single purchase was tied directly to my personal accounts. After reviewing the final receipt, he nodded in satisfaction. He opened his specialized legal software and started generating the necessary paperwork based on the evidence. 10 minutes later, he sent the files to the secure printer located in the business center. Gregory walked over, retrieved the printed pages, and brought them back to the table. He laid out the demand letter first, detailing the legal basis for the property extraction. Next, he compiled the proof of ownership packet, attaching the printed copies of my digital receipts and bank statements as undeniable evidence. Finally, he placed the notice of property retrieval on top. These documents formed a concrete legal shield. They established my unquestionable right to reclaim my belongings and outlined the severe civil consequences if anyone inside the house attempted to block the movers. My phone vibrated on the table. I picked it up and read a text message from the Texas Rapid Movers dispatcher. They confirmed the 2 trucks were fully fueled, the crew was briefed, and they were departing the warehouse. I showed the message to Gregory so he could synchronize his arrival. He gathered the signed documents, slid them into a manila envelope, and packed everything into his briefcase. He stood up and buttoned his jacket. "I have prepared the retrieval documents. We will proceed immediately," he said, with a professional tone. I nodded, shut my laptop, and placed it in my bag. We exited the co-working space and stepped back out into the freezing night. We did not travel together. Gregory walked to his parked sedan while I returned to my vehicle. The moving trucks were already navigating the suburban streets. Gregory would arrive at the property precisely when the crew did. I started my engine, pulled out of the parking lot, and began the drive back. Exactly 1.5 hours after leaving, Gregory and I parked in front of the house just as 2 large moving trucks pulled up. The heavy diesel engines rumbled loudly in the quiet suburban street, followed by the sharp hiss of air brakes. 6 men wearing matching work uniforms jumped out of the cabs. They immediately walked to the back of the trucks, unlatched the heavy metal doors, and pulled out steel loading ramps. They grabbed heavy-duty hand trucks, moving blankets, and rolls of packing tape lining up on the pavement. Gregory stepped out of his sedan. He buttoned his suit jacket, grabbed his leather briefcase, and walked toward me. We did not exchange any words. He led the way up the concrete driveway, and I followed a few steps behind. The crew walked behind us, the rubber wheels of their equipment rolling over the concrete. Gregory stepped onto the porch and pressed the doorbell. He did not press it once. He held his finger on the button, letting the chime echo continuously inside the house. Heavy footsteps approached from the hallway. The deadbolt clicked, and the front door swung open. Dad stood in the doorway. A deep frown formed on his face as he looked at the crew gathered on his lawn. He opened his mouth to complain about the noise, but then his eyes shifted and landed on me, standing next to a stranger in a dark suit. He looked completely bewildered. Gregory did not wait for an invitation. He stepped directly into the center of the doorway, blocking the threshold. He unzipped his briefcase and pulled out the thick manila envelope containing the legal documents. He extracted the demand letter and held it up so the printed text was visible. "The property in this house belongs to my client. I suggest you cooperate," Gregory stated with absolute authority. He handed the document forward. "This is a formal notice of property retrieval. My client possesses the verifiable receipts and bank statements for the furniture and appliances inside this residence. We are here to collect them." Dad stared at the paper, his face turning bright red. He looked at me, expecting me to step in, apologize, and explain this was a misunderstanding. I maintained eye contact but kept my mouth firmly shut. I offered 0 explanations. Realizing I was entirely serious, his confusion morphed into explosive anger. He crumpled the edge of the paper. "I demand you all get out of my house immediately," he shouted, his voice echoing out into the street. He lunged forward, grabbing the heavy wooden door, and tried to slam it shut in our faces. Gregory did not flinch. He simply placed the tip of his leather shoe against the doorframe, stopping the door from closing. He maintained a perfectly flat, professional expression. He did not raise his voice, but his tone became razor-sharp. "If you obstruct this, I will be forced to request a civil standby from the local police," Gregory warned coldly. He reached into his pocket and pulled out his mobile phone, holding his thumb over the screen. "A civil standby means I will dial dispatch right now. 2 patrol cars will arrive on this street with their lights flashing. Armed officers will escort these movers inside. If you attempt to physically block them or touch any of this legally documented property, you will be detained for obstruction. Do you want your neighbors to watch you get put in the back of a police cruiser tonight?" The word police cut through the shouting. Mom and Cynthia hurried into the foyer from the living room, drawn by the commotion. Mom heard the threat of patrol cars and froze. The absolute last thing she wanted was a public scandal on her pristine street. The fear of neighborhood gossip and humiliation instantly overpowered her arrogance. She reached out, grabbed Dad by the sleeve of his shirt, and pulled him backward. She whispered frantically at him to stop. Cynthia stood frozen near the staircase, staring at the moving crew with wide, terrified eyes. Dad's grip on the door loosened. He took a hesitant step back into the hallway, defeated by the legal reality of the situation. Seeing the path clear, Gregory turned his head and nodded to the crew chief. The lead mover stepped past Dad, pushing a large metal dolly over the threshold. The rubber wheels thudded heavily against the hardwood floor. The rest of the crew followed, marching straight into the living room. The retrieval operation had officially begun. The moving crew immediately spread out across the rooms, working swiftly under Gregory's strict supervision. Gregory stood in the center of the foyer, holding the itemized list of my assets. He raised his voice over the noise of the metal hand trucks rolling across the hardwood floor. "Attention moving crew, only remove movable electronics and furniture. Do not touch the structural integrity of the house." The foreman nodded and directed his team. Two men walked straight into the living room. They unplugged the 85-inch flat-screen television from the wall outlet, wrapped it securely in thick, padded moving blankets, and strapped it to a heavy-duty dolly. Another pair of workers lifted the massive leather sofa. They maneuvered it carefully through the front door and down the concrete driveway. A third team entered the dining area. They disassembled the solid oak dining table, unscrewing the heavy wooden legs quickly, and carried the separate pieces out to the waiting trucks. They worked with pure mechanical efficiency, ignoring the people in the hallway. The foreman signaled for his crew to move toward the back of the house. They entered the kitchen. One worker pulled the double-door stainless steel refrigerator away from the wall. He unplugged the thick power cord and disconnected the flexible ice maker hose with a wrench without damaging the water valve. They tilted the massive appliance onto a cart and rolled it out of the room. Next, they proceeded to the laundry room. They unscrewed the hot and cold water hoses from the washer and detached the exhaust vent from the dryer. They capped the wall connections properly, strictly avoiding any damage to the plumbing or electrical wiring embedded in the walls. Another worker located the central media panel in the hallway. He disconnected the broadband modem and the wireless router, coiling the power cables neatly. He placed the networking equipment into a plastic bin. Mom could no longer contain her panic. The reality of the situation finally shattered her earlier arrogance. She rushed toward me, her hands trembling as she grabbed my forearm. "You cannot do this. This is our home," she pleaded. Her voice cracked, attempting to invoke a sense of family loyalty that did not exist 10 minutes ago. Cynthia stood right behind her, weeping loudly. Cynthia begged me to stop the men, claiming they were ruining Christmas. She reminded me of our childhood and tried to use shared memories as a weapon to make me cancel the retrieval. I did not pull my arm away from Mom's grip. I simply looked down at her hand and then looked directly into her eyes. I maintained absolute silence. I offered no arguments, no anger, and no forgiveness. My expression remained entirely blank as I watched the living space get stripped bare. Seeing my completely cold reaction, Mom slowly released my arm and stepped back, finally understanding that her emotional manipulation had lost all its power. The commotion inside the house spilled out into the quiet street. The rumbling of the diesel truck engines, the clanking of metal dollies, and Cynthia's hysterical crying echoed through the neighborhood. Front doors across the street began to open. Several families stepped out onto their porches, clutching their coats against the winter cold. They stood on their manicured lawns, pointing and whispering to each other. They watched in clear shock as a professional moving crew hauled high-end furniture and appliances out of the residence on Christmas Eve. The perfect image my parents had carefully curated for years crumbled in front of their entire community. Dad noticed the spectators outside. He retreated further into the shadows of the hallway, entirely mortified, unable to face the public humiliation. The interior of the house was completely stripped of every item listed on Gregory's manifest. The foreman handed Gregory a clipboard to sign off on the interior extraction. Gregory reviewed the document and nodded. The crew transitioned to the exterior of the property. A worker grabbed a stepladder and positioned it near the front entrance. He retrieved a cordless drill from his tool belt. He swiftly unscrewed the Ring doorbell from the doorframe, leaving only a small hole and 2 exposed low-voltage wires. He then moved along the roof line, unmounting the high-definition security cameras I had installed for their safety. The worker dropped the electronic devices into his tool bag and folded the ladder. They stripped away the absolute final amenities I had provided. When the final piece of furniture was pushed onto the truck, the living room space was left with nothing but bare walls. The heavy thud of the metal ramp sliding into place echoed from the street. The foreman secured the latch on the cargo door and gave a sharp whistle, signaling the job was complete. Inside the house, the silence was deafening. The spacious interior now looked like an abandoned building. The indentations on the carpet were the only proof that furniture had ever existed there. Gregory stepped forward into the center of the room. He positioned himself directly in front of Dad. He opened his leather briefcase for the final time tonight and extracted a single crisp document. It was a formal notice of termination of financial support. The legal header was printed in bold black ink. The bottom of the page bore my verified signature, alongside a digital notary stamp, making it entirely legally binding. Gregory extended his arm, holding the paper steady in the cold air. Dad did not move at first. He stared at the document as if it were a physical threat. Eventually, he raised his trembling hand and took the paper. He read the title, his eyes darting across the paragraphs outlining the immediate cessation of all funding. The aggressive posture he held earlier completely collapsed. Gregory did not wait for him to read the entire document. He delivered the summary with surgical precision. All autopay mandates have been canceled. From this moment on, you must pay your own utility bills, Gregory stated. His voice left no room for negotiation or misunderstanding. He systematically listed the specific accounts that had been unlinked. He named the Texas Power Grid, the Municipal Water and Sewage Department, the broadband internet provider, and the annual homeowners insurance policy. He clarified that the associated credit lines were permanently closed. He informed them that the next billing cycle would arrive under their names, and any failure to pay would result in immediate service disconnections. The financial pipeline was severed. There was no grace period, no transition phase, and no final courtesy payment. The crushing reality of the situation finally registered on their faces. Mom let out a sharp gasp and pressed her hands against her cheeks. Cynthia leaned against the doorframe, looking physically sick. The illusion of their self-sufficiency shattered. They suddenly comprehended the sheer volume of cash required to maintain this property. The winter heating costs in this state were notoriously high, often reaching hundreds of dollars a month during a freeze. Without my bank account automatically draining to cover their expenses, they faced a barrage of invoices they had no savings to pay for. The comfortable, effortless lifestyle they felt entitled to was officially over. They realized that their daily existence, the warmth radiating from the vents and the running water in their sinks, had entirely depended on the daughter they had mocked just hours ago. I stepped away from the entryway and walked toward the kitchen area. The space felt enormous without the appliances and the dining set. I stood near the spot where the refrigerator used to be. I reached into my coat pocket and pulled out the red envelope. I held it up in the air. I made sure Dad, Mom, and Cynthia could clearly see the airline logo embossed on the front cover. I opened the flap and extracted the 4 printed boarding passes for the first-class flight to Honolulu. I looked directly into Mom's eyes, then shifted my gaze to Dad, and finally to Cynthia. I gripped the thick cardstock with both hands. I tore the ticket straight down the middle. I stacked the halves together and ripped them again with a sharp, deliberate motion. I opened my hands and let the torn fragments fall. They fluttered down, scattering across the bare hardwood floor like useless debris. This was the trip I intended to gift you all, but now it no longer exists, I said. My tone was completely flat. There was no sadness, No lingering anger and no desire for an apology. It was a simple statement of fact. I turned my back on them. I did not pause to listen to Dad stammering or Cynthia crying. I walked straight out the front door, stepping past Gregory, and headed down the driveway. I climbed into the driver's seat of my car, started the engine, and pulled away from the curb. I left the three of them standing paralyzed inside a cold, empty house, permanently terminating all my responsibilities. 90 days after that Christmas Eve, a financial domino effect delivered brutal reality checks to their lives. The obligation of paying basic utility bills immediately consumed their limited monthly income. The heating costs during the late winter months, combined with water and broadband internet invoices, rapidly drained their checking accounts. Mom had to completely abandon her established shopping habits. She stopped visiting high-end department stores. She canceled her weekly salon appointments and boutique memberships. Instead, she began driving to a discount supermarket located on the edge of town. She spent her afternoons walking down crowded aisles, comparing prices on generic canned goods and bulk dry pasta. When she reached the checkout counter, she carefully counted her cash, occasionally instructing the cashier to put items back when the total exceeded her strict budget. This routine stood in stark contrast to the luxury lifestyle she had previously paraded around her friends. Cynthia faced an immediate and aggressive financial crisis. The collection agencies started calling her mobile phone multiple times a day regarding her platinum card balance. The debt accumulated rapidly with high-interest penalties, and she had zero incoming revenue to cover the minimum payments. The pressure escalated until Dad confronted her directly in the barren living room. "You have to get a job right now. Your credit card has been locked by the bank." Dad demanded, offering no sympathy for her situation. Cynthia had no other options left. She printed out her sparse resume, drove to the local outdoor shopping center, and submitted applications to various retail clothing stores. A discount apparel shop hired her for a part-time position. She ended up working long, exhausting shifts. She spent her days folding shirts, organizing clearance racks, and dealing with difficult customers for minimum wage. Her feet ached after standing for 8 hours straight on hard tile floors. The reality of physical labor effectively ended her years of comfortable laziness and entitlement. Despite Cynthia's meager new income, the household math still failed to balance. Dad tried to secure personal loans from 3 different local banks. His debt-to-income ratio triggered automatic rejections in every single system. He reached out to old friends and extended relatives asking for short-term cash loans, but everyone politely declined and stopped answering his subsequent calls. Desperation forced his hand. He walked out to the driveway and looked at his late-model luxury sedan, the vehicle he used to project an image of corporate success to the neighborhood. "We no longer have enough money to keep this car, we have to sell it," he announced to Mom that evening. The next morning, he drove the vehicle to a volume used car dealership. He negotiated a rapid sale and handed over the title for quick cash. He returned home hours later, driving a cheap, unreliable used compact car with high mileage. He used the leftover funds from the transaction to cover the overdue property taxes and the accumulating grocery bills. The neighborhood dynamic shifted completely against them. The residents on their street clearly remembered the 2 moving trucks and the public spectacle on the holiday. The illusion of the flawless, prosperous family was shattered permanently. When Mom walked out to the mailbox, neighbors no longer stopped to chat. If they saw her walking down the sidewalk, they intentionally crossed the street to avoid interaction. They offered tight, uncomfortable smiles and quickly turned away. Invitations to community barbecues and block parties stopped arriving in their mailbox. They were socially alienated, isolated by the undeniable truth of their situation. In their desperation, they continuously tried to reach out to me. They attempted to call my personal phone number and my office line. They tried sending long emails playing the victims, hoping to manipulate my emotions one last time to secure a financial bailout. However, every single attempt hit a digital wall. My phone carrier automatically rejected their numbers, dropping the calls before they even rang. My email server filtered their addresses directly into a permanently deleted folder. The security desk at my corporate office had explicit instructions and a photo roster to turn them away at the lobby. They received no responses, no arguments, and no money. There were no sudden miracles to save them. They were left completely alone in that echoing house, forced to survive the harsh consequences of their own actions. 6 months later, I packed my final suitcase and prepared to leave Texas to accept a new branch manager position in Denver, Colorado. The promotion represented a significant leap in my corporate career, coming with a substantial salary increase and executive responsibilities. Relocating offered the perfect opportunity to establish a completely new life, geographically and emotionally separated from my toxic past. I closed the trunk of my car, looking at the Dallas skyline one last time. The air felt remarkably lighter. My mind was completely focused on the strategic goals of my new office and the professional challenges ahead. The physical distance of 800 miles acted as a definitive, unbreakable boundary. I was no longer the reliable ATM for ungrateful relatives. I was a focused executive taking absolute control of my own trajectory. I drove onto the interstate without a single ounce of regret weighing me down. Before my departure, Gregory executed one final legal maneuver on my behalf. Despite the blocked phone numbers and filtered emails, Dad and Cynthia had attempted to gather information about my relocation through my former co-workers. To shut this down permanently, Gregory formally served a cease and desist order directly to Dad, Mom, and Cynthia. The legal document constructed an impenetrable barrier against any future harassment or unsolicited inquiries. It explicitly prohibited them from contacting me via phone, email, or third-party intermediaries. It also legally barred them from approaching my new residence or my corporate office in Colorado. If they violated any term of the order, Gregory was fully authorized to file immediate police reports for stalking. The paperwork removed their absolute last remaining shred of access to me. I let the legal system handle the boundary enforcement, ensuring they understood the absolute finality of my absence. The financial impact of severing their funding became incredibly apparent within a single quarter. Without the crushing burden of their utility bills, insurance premiums, and luxury credit card debts, my personal savings multiplied rapidly. I redirected the cash that used to cover their autopay expenses straight into an aggressive investment portfolio. I utilized those accumulated funds to purchase a modern high-rise condo in downtown Denver. I signed the closing documents independently, knowing every single dollar came directly from my own hard work. Walking into my new living room, I looked out through the floor-to-ceiling windows at the snow-capped mountains. The space belonged entirely to me. There were no leeches waiting to drain my resources, and no manipulative comments undermining my success. I finally enjoyed the pure, unfiltered fruits of my own labor. This entire experience solidified a critical life lesson for me. Your fundamental value as a human being is never measured by the amount of money you spend on other people. Society often conditions us to believe that providing endless financial support equates to familial love, but that is a highly dangerous trap. You must never confuse genuine sacrifice with financial exploitation. When people only validate your existence based on your ability to pay their bills, they do not love you. They are merely using you for their own convenience. Recognizing the strict difference between a supportive reciprocal relationship and a parasitic attachment is absolutely essential for your own survival. Walking away from blood relatives is incredibly difficult, but sometimes it is the only viable way to protect your mental health and your future. Furthermore, true justice does not require screaming matches or dramatic emotional confrontations. The cleanest, most effective form of revenge is simply taking back your value and completely removing your physical and financial presence. When you stop funding their delusion, you force the exploiters to face the harsh reality of their own incompetence. Let them survive on their own merits and deal with their own consequences. Thank you so much for watching this story to the very end. If you ever found yourself in a similar situation dealing with financial exploitation from your own family members, what exactly would you do? Would you confront them directly, or would you quietly pack up your belongings and walk away? Please share your thoughts and experiences in the comments section below, and do not forget to subscribe to Revenge Mode for more satisfying stories.